Good morning, everyone. We are now live for our event today. Thank you for joining us for the American Academy of Pediatrics Nevada Chapter Virtual Walk with a Doc Kids Time. I'd like to welcome all of our parents, kids, and fellow practitioners to our December virtual walk. My name is Dr. Lily Hadaji, and I am a pediatrician here in Las Vegas, as well as the Nevada chapter of the AAP Walk with a Doc coordinator. For 5 years now, the Nevada AAP chapter has been meeting every second Sunday of every month. We coordinate kid-friendly talks on a variety of different pediatric health topics and then enjoy an outdoor walk together. It's a really great way to get outdoors, learn important information about the health of our kids, and have the opportunity to ask the local pediatrician or pediatric specialist any questions. Our chapter also helps coordinate this event for the Reno community. Now, we normally join at the Springs Preserves outdoor venue for most of the year, and then during hotter summer months, we gather at the Mount Charleston Visitor Gateway to escape the heat. So since we're keeping our distance to protect ourselves and our community from this pandemic, we're holding a virtual walk with a doc this morning, live streamed online. For our talk today, we are very happy to welcome Dr. Pamela Greenspun, who will be speaking to us about the importance of healthy sleeping habits in our children. Dr. Greenspun is a board-certified pediatrician at Desert Valley Pediatrics and immediate past president of the Nevada AAP. As Dr. Greenspun starts her talk, I really encourage all of you to use the chat box to talk to each other and also ask any question that she can answer at the conclusion of her talk. Dr. Greenspun, we are ready when you are.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hadaji, and welcome to everyone who's here. Thank you for asking me to speak on this topic. This is really something that I get questions about almost daily. And if not, it's something that I talk about as just part of the well checks. So sleep is so critical for the overall well-being of children and adolescents. It's a time when children are growing, and if there's inadequate sleep, we can see it affect mental health, attentiveness, even weight, blood pressure. It can even affect safety. So there's so many reasons that children need to get good sleep. And of course, it's going to vary quite a bit depending upon the age of the child. So with newborns, they sleep a lot. They pretty much sleep, wake up to eat, and we'll go back to sleep. So it's not unusual for newborns to sometimes be sleeping for around 20 hours a day. But as they get older, they will require less sleep. And so usually later in infancies, around 4 to 12 months, it may be more like 12 to 16 hours, and they may start getting into more of a routine with napping and then longer stretches at night. Early on, they may only sleep for 2-3 hours at a stretch and then want to feed, and they'll need those frequent feeds early on. But as they get older, they can have longer sleep times at night, but still needing quite a number of naps throughout the day. During the toddler period in a 24-hour time frame, they may need about 11 to 14 hours of sleep. Again, could vary a little bit, but typically still taking 1 or 2 naps a day and then having a fairly long stretch at nighttime. As they're getting into the preschool years, sometimes they're no longer napping. Some preschoolers still will nap, but in a 24-hour period, still will need about 10 to 13 hours of sleep. Once school starts, most children are no longer napping, but will still need a good amount of sleep, so about 9 to 12 hours at nighttime. And then as they're entering the teenage years, again, still needing a good amount of sleep, 8 to 10 hours at night. And, their sleep cycles can even change a little bit during puberty, where they're may want to stay up a little bit later. And a lot of parents want to blame them, saying, oh, they're never going to sleep, but there actually are some changes that we see during puberty, which may cause them to want to go to sleep later and then wake up a little bit later. So what are really the best things that parents can do to help kids get the sleep that they need, because it's so critical for their overall health? I would say one of the most important things for all areas of parenting is routine and consistency. Having a consistent routine is critical, starting fairly young. I mean, at newborn stages, it's not always easy to get into a strict routine. But as they get older, having that consistency with meals and nap time, and then as they're starting to get into school and have activities, having consistency is again very, very important. Um, Another thing that's really important, and it's part of why we're here, is physical activity. You know, exercise can be very helpful in allowing kids to get a good amount of sleep every night. And again, the walking with the dog is typically done outside, so that getting that fresh air, sunshine can also truly help with good sleep. Another thing that we've all had a lot of during this pandemic has been screen time. We were certainly seeing lots of screen time before, but during the pandemic, we were seeing kids using screens even more, whether it was for school or just for entertainment. But having too much screen time, especially right before bedtime, can affect how children are sleeping. So it's important to give kids at least about an hour before bedtime without having any screen time, because the blue light from many of these devices can affect the brain and a chemical that's released called melatonin, which makes children and adults drowsy. So you really want to give kids at least about an hour of no screen time, doing some other relaxing activities before bed. Younger kids, we talk about, doing a bath, brushing their teeth, reading a book, and then going to bed. Think about those P's. But for older children, maybe some relaxing music, showering, reading, ideally not from a device, but an actual paper book, or just doing some other quiet types of activities to help get ready for bedtime. Then one other thing is just having an environment that's very supportive of good sleep. And ideally, the bed should just be for sleep. It hasn't always been practical. I know, again, sometimes kids are playing games, they're studying, some were even going to school when they were doing distance learning. But if it's possible to have the bedroom just as a place for sleep, or at least the bed being a place for sleep, that can be very important. And again, there may be some special blanket, special stuffed animal, keeping the room cool but not too cold, making sure it's comfortable in that room can also truly help with sleep. And then, finally, I'd just like to remind parents that keeping consistent is critical. Be a good example for your children. I know oftentimes adults aren't getting enough sleep, and if we're not, it's hard to teach our kids that it's important that they also get enough sleep. So as always, talk to your pediatrician. If you do have any questions, reach out. We are always more than happy to answer your questions. So Dr. Hadaji, have any questions come up that I can answer about sleep?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Greenspan, for that really awesome talk so far. I have a few questions for you from our listeners. The first one would be, my spouse and I recently separated and have noticed that our child is having difficulty sleeping. What would you recommend?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Every year we do see a lot of children who are experiencing changes in the home environment. And again, that can impact them in a lot of different ways. If the rooms are different, if the schedule is very different, if the child is just distressed, all of those things can impact the child. So I would certainly try to encourage parents to work together to have some consistency with the schedule. Sometimes parents will, try to have similar types of blankets or books or stuffed animals, or they can bring it from house to house, just so that routine can stay consistent. And again, if the child is, having a lot of distress, sometimes talking with a counselor can be helpful as well. But again, talk with your pediatrician to get some additional insights.
Okay, thank you very much. I have another question for you, Dr. Greenspan. I hear often about melatonin. Now, is this recommended to be given in children?
Okay, that's another great question. I do get a lot of questions about melatonin. And as we talked about, melatonin is a chemical that's released by the pineal gland in the brain. It's usually released in the evening, and it does help with sleep. It's not necessarily a sleep aid, and I do see a lot of forms available in the pharmacies. So again, before giving your child any type of medication or supplement, I do recommend talking with your pediatrician. For some children, for a short time period, it can be helpful. There are some children with neurodevelopmental differences where it may be used more consistently. But ideally, we want to use a low dose for a short time period to help if there have been some sleep difficulties, and then see if it can be weaned off while working on consistency with other sleep routines.
Okay, great. And our last question for you is, why does the American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC recommend that middle school and high school start after 8:30 in the morning?
Great, that's another excellent question. So as I alluded to earlier, as children are starting to enter puberty, their sleep cycles are actually changing, and they're staying awake longer and wanting to sleep a little bit later. And for them to get that 8 to 10 hours of sleep, which is really ideal, it's just difficult if they have to be at school at 7, if they're taking a bus, have to wake up early. And so typically they may want to fall asleep around 11, and it's just going to be very difficult for them to get adequate sleep. And when they're not well rested, that can impact, again, as we talk about, their health, their mood, their school performance, as well as their safety. So this is really something that we do recommend, that schools have later start times for these older children and adolescents.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Greenspan, for your very informative talk on the importance of healthy sleep habits in our children. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. It's time for us to all now go on our outdoor walk. So as we stop the live feed, I really encourage everyone to take the time to enjoy some physical activity outside. And it's colder outside now, so remember to stay warm. It would be great to see any photos of yourselves walking together that can be posted on the Nevada AAP Twitter feed at AAP Nevada. Make sure to walk for at least 20 minutes, bring water and sunscreen, and maintain social distancing when necessary, and wear a mask. We are keeping up to date on the latest recommendations from the CDC and AAP, and we'll let you all know when it's safe to resume in-person walks. Please make sure also to take your kids 5 years and older now for their COVID-19 vaccinations, and children 6 months and older for their flu vaccinations. And also remember that these can be co-administered or given at the same time. Our next virtual walk with a doc will be held January 9th at 10 a.m. and we really hope to see all of you there again. Stay safe and healthy and have a great walk. Thank you.
Thank you.